Hey everyone, Jeff Joyner here. You know, the people who know me well know that I love comic books and superheroes. I always have, since I was a kid. Mostly Marvel and DC comic books, but I grew up with Spider-Man and Superman and Green Lantern and the Green Arrow and Flash and X-Men and Fantastic Four and Thor and the Avengers. Love that stuff. Read it all growing up. When I was in college, I kind of got into collecting comics, where I started for the first time, taking care of comics and putting them in a polyethylene bag with an acid-free board and kind of keeping a track of which ones I had and how much they were worth over time. Fast forward after I got married and we were a young married couple, we were looking to start a business of our own. We didn't have any money. We needed some money to invest in growing our business. So I actually sold my comic book collection for $10,000 to somebody who was starting a comic book store. But always loved comics, and still do to this day. Love comics and superheroes, and it's a big part of the theme of this channel about living an epic life, is trying to live your life in a heroic fashion, whether you have superpowers or not. Years later, along came my kids, and I actually kind of got my kids into comic books, and one of my good parenting lessons is taking my kids down to the comic book shop, and they would save up their money to be able to buy their very own Avengers and X-Men comic books, and I was so proud. And but this whole time, my whole life, there's one individual. There's lots of artists and creators that I really admire who work in comic books. Comic book art is like the one truly American art form. Every other kind of art form is something that we borrowed from Europe or Africa or somewhere else, but comic books were created here. In fact, a lot of them created here in Ohio, where I live, so that's kind of cool. And so lots of artists that I admire, but there was one that's kind of head and shoulders above the rest that has been my lifelong dream to meet, and it is Stan Lee. Now, some of you don't know who Stan Lee is or care, but Stan Lee was the guy's kind of the father of Marvel Comics. That he was, as a young man, got a job like writing stories for comic books, and he, didn't do it because he loved comic books. He did it because he needed the money. There's actually a great documentary of his life that I recommend you watch if you're interested. But this is the guy who single-handedly thought up characters like Spider-Man and Captain America and the Hulk and Iron Man and Thor and the Avengers and the Fantastic Four and all of those, this guy, and the X-Men. He just thought them up and made stories about them. And years later, decades later, these are household names and they're famous characters. And so I've always wanted to meet this guy, Stan Lee. And some of you, like me, grew up reading Stan Lee's comics. Some of you maybe are younger and maybe you've seen him. He does cameos in all of the Marvel movies. There's like a little cameo starring Stan Lee and like a little Easter egg. And maybe you knew who that was. Maybe you're like, who's that old man that's in all the Marvel movies?
Security ought to be beefed up a lot more. In a place like this, you can't... Look out! Welcome back to the Baxter, Dr. Richards. I've got the usual for you. Good to have you back, sir. Superheroes in New York? Give me a break.
Peter Parker!
I think I know that guy. Son. Now don't you move. My hands aren't as steady as they used to be.
By Odin's beard, you shall not cut my hair, lest you feel the wrath of the mighty Thor. Please, kind sir, do not cut my hair.
Well, the 60s were fun, but now I'm paying for it. I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.
So it's been my dream to meet him. Well, about 10 years ago, I was up in Detroit on business. I just finished some lunch, and my wife called me, and she said, hey, I just bought your birthday present. And I said, oh, well, that's nice. My birthday's coming up. And she goes, yeah, it's going to be the best present you ever got in your whole life. It's the best present in the world for you. And I said, I shouldn't have even said this, because what if I was wrong? But I said, well, it can't be the best present in the world unless it's a chance for me to meet Stan Lee. And she said, oh my gosh, that's what it is. I'm like, what? She said, I bought tickets for you and Natalie and Amanda to meet Stan Lee at Ohio Comic-Con. And I was like, what? What? My heart starts racing. Are you serious? No, come on. Are you serious? We're going to meet Stan Lee? I'm so excited. So we told the girls and they got all excited. Bless her heart, Natalie started praying every night for Stan Lee to live until November so we can meet him at Comic-Con. And I was so excited. And I got to tell you, these tickets that Kathy bought, they cost $200 per person for a private meeting with Stan Lee. Not totally private, but like a handful of people in a room where you could meet him, get his autograph, ask him some questions, get a picture taken with him. And I was so excited. I really was. So the day came, we went up to Columbus Convention Center and we were so excited and we got a chance to meet Stan Lee. Small handful of people in this room. Stan Lee comes in, he's talking to us, he's telling stories, he's answering questions. I was giddy, I was beside myself. The girls each got to talk to him a little bit and ask him some questions. I think, Natalie asked him if he could have any superpower, what would it be? And he said it would be luck. I'd like to be super lucky. And I got a chance to talk to him and I said, Mr. Lee, I don't have a question for you, but I just got to tell you, I grew up with your characters. I mean, like Peter Parker, I was as much of a friend of mine when I was a little kid as anybody, that I used to sit in my room reading these comic books. And got our picture taken with him, got some autographs. You could kind of bring things for him to autograph. And so I got kind of a mat to sign where I could put a picture of him and me in there. And I had also bought some like mini movie posters about the documentary movie about his life. And so got him to sign those and we got those framed and those are some of our prized possessions. And it was just really, really cool getting a chance to meet Stan Lee. So what's the point of this story? Some of you guys, you don't know Stan Lee, you don't want, some of you guys are like, oh my gosh, I would love to meet him. And you know what? It's too late. Stan Lee passed away a few years ago. And so if you did not meet Stan Lee, you ain't gonna meet him now because he's gone. But the point of the story is, there are some of you that think $600 to go meet some dude is a colossal waste of money. I get that, right? Because there's people that you might want to go meet that I wouldn't pay $10 to go meet. I'd pay money to avoid meeting some famous people. But some of you are like, oh man, I would gladly pay that amount to have got a chance to meet Stan Lee, or your favorite performer, or your favorite movie star, musician, whatever. Right? Maybe it's just, you want to, spend some money to have lunch with a successful business person and pick their brain. But the point of this whole story is, whatever it is for you, do it, man. Spend the money. People ask me all the time for advice on different things and what's some of the best advice I've ever gotten. And I often tell people, if you have the choice, I'd recommend that you spend your money on experiences and memories instead of stuff. I could have bought my girls some clothes with that money. We could have bought a video game system with that money. But I'm glad, and so are they, that we invested that money into an opportunity to meet somebody that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. So if you want to turn off this video, go ahead. If you're interested in seeing some video clips of Stan Lee and some of the things he had to say, I did film. It's a little shaky because I was so excited. But here's a couple clips from when I was filming when Stan Lee was there. I think they're pretty awesome.
So many things. Someday I'll write a book. Oh, I did write a book. So somebody asked me to write a biography and I didn't have time. So the publisher got another writer to write the biography of me. It's supposed to be an autobiography, but he wrote it. I didn't like the way he wrote it, so I changed about 3/4 of it. I ended up rewriting it. So we had 1/4 of his and 3/4 of mine, and I called it a bio-autography. I didn't know what to call it. I'm not good with favorites. I'm also my biggest fan. I like everything I did. But I kind of like the one in Spider-Man where I was a librarian and I'm stamping the books and kind of humming to myself with earphones on. And I don't know that Spider-Man and the Lizard are having a life and death battle right behind me. And I liked when I couldn't get into the wedding at the Fantastic Four because they didn't think I was Stan Lee. But I liked them all. I liked when I was. I was with three pretty blondes. And I had my arm around my arms around all of them, and we were as close as we could be at a gathering. And I had a pipe in my mouth, so I would look like Hugh Hefner. And then Iron Man or Tony Stark walks by me. And he says, "Nice going, Hef," or something like that. And I'm supposed to turn my head and look at him to acknowledge that he said that. But I had the pipe in my mouth. So you do a lot of takes. Every time I turned my head, the pipe hit the girl in the face.
I just wanted to ask, you've created all these legendary characters. Are there any other characters you have in mind, or any?
Are there any I have in mind that I haven't created?
Really?
Not really. I didn't do them because they were things I just had to write. I did it because I was ordered to do it. My publisher said, "Stan, you better give me another superhero work. I want to bring out a new book. Give me an idea for it." I'm not the kind of guy who gets inspirations. If I'm not writing, I'm walking along wondering why this girl is taking those pens away from my what I'm doing here. I don't get inspirations. I don't walk along, "Wow, I got a great idea for a character." I usually think, "Wow, I'm late for dinner. I hope my wife won't."
A big part of living an epic life is doing the things that make you excited, doing the things that make you come alive. And man, I'm so glad I spent that money to get a chance for me and my girls to meet someone who really is one of my heroes.